Thank you, everybody, for watching the NHL Interchange, where today we are talking the NHL Draft. Thank you, everybody, for watching the NHL Interchange. Make sure you follow us on i80sports.com, at our Twitter handle, at i80sports_sportsnhl, and our Facebook group, the i80 Sports Discussion Group. He's Tom, I'm Brian, and joining us today is a very special guest of mine, a good friend of mine, from the hockeywriters.com, Mr. Jack Dawkins. Jack, nice to have you on for this particular episode, especially with your knowledge of different prospects. Tell us a little bit of what you write about at the Hockey Writers.
I'm a contributor on their prospect team, though that's got a lot more guys than just me. But I write primarily for the Washington Capitals, the Minnesota Wild, the Arizona Coyotes. I also cover the New Jersey Devils, the Los Angeles Kings, and the Florida Panthers.
Very cool. And you can catch Jack Dawkins at www.thehockeywriters.com. Make sure you check out some of his content in your spare time. Before we get into draft coverage today, we want to talk a little bit about some highlights throughout the week, some updates. First of all, if you are living under a rock and didn't realize this happened, the Tampa Bay Lightning officially won the Stanley Cup, beating the Dallas Stars in 6 games, with Victor Hedman taking home the Conn Smythe Trophy. Tom, any opinions on this? This was something that you kind of called a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and somehow my predictions came true. Tampa won in 6, and Hedman won the Conn Smythe. And don't ask me for stock advice or anything like that, because I'll probably wind up letting you down. But it was a well-deserved championship for the Bolts. After they have that so-called mandatory suffering rule that everybody talks about, after blowing it the last 2 years, they finally went out there and won it. They addressed their depth. They were able to play any style of hockey you wanted to play, and they were able to beat you. Well-deserved by them. Congratulations to Tampa and all your fans down there.
Definitely. A major congratulations to Tampa Bay, especially after last year's disappointment, only to make it a good, well-rounded ending there for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We got a very busy week coming up in the NHL. On Tuesday, we have the very first round of the NHL Draft, where you can actually catch Tom and I talking about the NHL Draft live during the stream itself. We're going to be starting a live stream at 6:45 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Periscope through Twitter. So make sure you catch us there on Tuesday night. But before we get into that draft coverage, we have some potential buyout talk coming up, as well as some extensions leading into free agency that starts on Friday at noon Eastern. But first, Tom is going to give us a heartfelt tribute to Henrik Lundqvist, who was bought out by the New York Rangers, which I know this probably hurts you being a Rangers fan, Tom.
Yeah, it is a very sad day. I mean, there's no doubt about it that he's the best goalie in New York Rangers history. You can make a case for Richter, but if you look at the numbers for Lundqvist, Richter wasn't even in the same boat. Richter wasn't even in the same boat as Lundqvist. He carried that team for years. There were many playoff games, I remember, many series versus the Capitals where he was winning games, where the Rangers had to win games to stay in the series. He would win games by himself. It really is a shame that they never could win one with him. It really is a shame he never got that cup in New York. That era between 2012 and 2015, the Rangers probably should have won at least 1 or 2 cups. They couldn't get it done either for coaching reasons or just for depth and injuries. The guy wore his heart on his sleeve. The guy, loved playing in New York, loved being a Ranger. But unfortunately, by the time catches up with all of us, nobody can stay in their prime forever, and that was the case with Lundqvist over the past few years. He was just slowing down. And I think with calling up Igor this year, Igor Shesterkin really showed that he was ready to step in and take on that starting goalie role in New York. And, with goalies, when they're ready to step in there, you have to let them do it. You can't just keep telling them, we're going to play as your back, we're going to play as your backup. Igor showed he was ready to do it. He showed that he could start. He showed that he could be an NHL caliber goalie this year. And unfortunately, Henrik was sort of the odd man out. I don't know if Igor's going to be the bona fide number 1 starter there. I think they may do a 60-40 with Igor and Georgiev, provided they keep Georgiev. But, man, hats off to Hank. What a great career. Great career in New York. Won Vezina Trophy. I feel like he maybe should have had more. Won that gold medal with that stacked Team Sweden back in the 06 Olympics, and then won a world championship recently. So you can't call the guy a bust. You can't say the guy never won. He did win. He just didn't win a Stanley Cup.
I tend to agree, and it was, even being a Devils fan for me, I can appreciate the success that Lundqvist has had. And who knows? Who knows what the future holds for him? Maybe he tries to become a backup somewhere else. Maybe he tries to be a starter somewhere else, even though I doubt it. I know he wants to be a starter. I don't know if I could see it. Before we move on to our draft coverage, we do have two re-signings that have happened recently. Robin Lehner re-signed with the Vegas Golden Knights on a 5-year, $5 million a year contract. And Tristan Jarry has signed a 3-year extension to stay with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I believe that deal is for a little over $3 million a year as well. I'll open the floor to either of you. Any thoughts on either of these extensions and what it could mean for either the backup situation or potential, moving of pieces? Jack, I'll start with you.
Zary arguably outplayed Murray last year. Zary's under contract. Murray is not under contract yet. There's been interest in Matt Murray around the league. I got to think Matt Murray's on the move.
Definitely. Tom, how about you?
You know what? This actually opens up a question of what's going to now happen with Marc-Andre Flurry. It was pretty obvious that he was going to leave Vegas. There were some rumblings going around about him going back to Pittsburgh. But, I mean, is he really going to go back to Pittsburgh as a backup now when they pretty much said that with this Zary and Sorter, they're gone? So now this kind of opens up, okay, where is Marc-Andre Flurry going to go now? Because the two places you thought he may stick around, whether it be Vegas or go back to in Pittsburgh, those kind of are out the window now. So it opens up a big question mark with him with these two signings.
And
Fleury's actually made it clear that he would like to stay in Vegas. That was reported. I forget who reported that on Twitter. It was reported back when the first rumblings of this Lehner contract came out. If you remember, those came out during the playoffs. They were talking about a Lehner extension, and then it didn't materialize, and everybody was like, well, what the heck? But somebody actually got to Flurry and got an interview with him, and he said he's perfectly fine playing out his contract in Vegas as a 1B or as a backup. He's very happy with his teammates. He's very happy with the situation that he has there. I think the only concern there is the money. You look at his salary cap hit and you say to yourself, can you really afford to pay a backup that kind of money in a flat cap situation? You have a salary cap that's not going to move for 3 years. So I really think that's going to be the deciding factor, is does his cap hit in a flat cap situation mean Vegas has to move him? If that's the case, I mean, as you guys were talking about Hank, I firmly believe Hank can still be a starter in this league or a 1B guy somewhere. There's so many teams that have questions at goaltending. I mean, the Minnesota Wild started the playoffs with Alex Stalock as their starter.
This is true. This is actually very, very true. I know any team that would definitely take a flyer on Hank and be very happy if he ends up coming out of camp and even wins a job. There are going to be plenty of teams that are going to need goaltending help. And, I mean, for me, I don't personally want to see it, but you have some cynical Devils fans that are just like, he could play a good 1B or backup to Mackenzie Blackwood with the Devils, but I don't see it happening. I feel like they're going to keep Corey Schneider for at least another year until that buyout train possibly comes. So I don't know. Who knows? Jack disagrees, obviously, but we'll just see what happens. Moving on to our draft coverage. So what the three of us have done is we have a mock top 10 that we have created for each of us. And we're going to spend a little bit of time with each person's mock draft. We're going to get started with Jack's top 10, then move on to Tom's top 10, and then my top 10. So without further ado, Jack, you have the floor for your mock top 10.
Let's see. Mock top 10. Well, obviously Lafreniere starts it. That's not... Anybody who doesn't have Lafreniere starting it they're looking at the wrong stuff. I would put Byfield at your second spot. I would actually put Jamie Drysdale at your third spot. I don't think people value defensemen enough. Tim Stützle would be in at number 3. I would put Jake Sanderson at number 4 because of, again, defensive value. Lucas Raymond at number 5. Alexander Holtz at number 6. And then you get into the other guys. I'd probably put Lundell at 7. Askarov at 8. Perfetti at 9, and then am I forgetting anybody? Yeah, Rodion Amirov at 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my top 10. And the ones that I'm sure people are going to question there is, why do you have Sanderson so high? I mean, I think Jake Sanderson is the best defender available in this draft. I think he's better than Jamie Drysdale. I put Jamie Drysdale above him because the consensus is that Drysdale is better. I don't agree. I don't have to agree. And then the other one is I've had Rodion Amirov in my top 10 since October of 2019. I watch a lot of KHL hockey. I watch a lot of MHL hockey. If you want to watch a lot of MHL hockey, the MHL streams every single game on its YouTube channel. So if you want to watch free hockey and watch Russian prospects, the commentating is annoying, but simply because it's in Russian and I don't understand Russian. I wish I understood Russian.
Fair. Very, very fair. What do you think Amirov has, especially rounding out your top 10, that, let's say, that you might not like in a Seth Jarvis or in a Jack Quinn at number 10?
Yeah, I realize who I left out. By the way, I left out Marco Rossi. Swap Perfetti and Rossi. I would put Perfetti outside my top 10 before I would put Rossi outside my top 10.
Very fair.
What does Amirov have? Well, I mean, for starters, he's got better size than they do. Amirov is a bigger, more powerful skater. I've also seen what Amirov can do at the professional level. Amirov looks like he belongs at the professional level already. I don't have a question mark in my head of can Amirov perform at the professional level because I've watched him do it. He played very well on with UFA last year when he was in his KHL call-ups. When he got time on KHL ice, he looked like he belonged, and he made professional hockey players look bad on occasion. And he's just all around. He's just an all-around good hockey forward. He's got a good forecheck. He's got a nice shot. He's got all the tools in his box that you look to yourself and say, that's a top 6 NHL forward someday. Because he's a top 6 KHL forward in the next year or two.
At what age is he right now? I didn't look. How old is he coming into this draft? Is he 18 or is he 19 or 20?
Oh no, he's 18. This is his first draft eligible year.
Got it.
He's a first year draft eligible. That's why he's such an interesting prospect, because he's a first year draft eligible who played half the year in the KHL. Usually they keep those guys in the MHL. They don't usually bring them up until they're 19, 20, but he was so good. And it's not like UFA's a bad team either. That's a team that is stacked with prospects. They could see at least 4 prospects drafted this year. You'd have Amirov, Pashin, Shushkov, and Alalikin are all guys who I could see getting drafted. Oh, and Shakir Mukhamadullin too. So they have 5, but those other 4 are just forwards. So that's a team that's loaded with prospects. It's loaded with potential, and they also have one of the top scoring players in the KHL right now. They have a Finnish line that has Granlund and Hartikainen on it. And then they also have Nikita Soshnikov, if everybody remembers him.
Do you remember that name?
Who does very well. He does very well in the KHL and probably will do an NHL comeback. So Amirov is fitting in with these people. He rose to be the cream of the crop of a prospect-laden system. I don't think he's gotten enough attention. Simply put, I don't think Rodion Amirov has gotten nearly enough attention in North America.
Very good assessment, Jack. Tom, let's get into your mock top 10.
Okay, well, my number 1 is pretty easy to figure out, Alexis Lafreniere. Number 2, I'm going to go with Tim Stützle. Number 3, I'm going with Byfield. Number 4 is where it's going to get interesting. Number 4, I'm going with Perfetti. Detroit's been very, very high on Perfetti. He's sort of been their plan C. Obviously, Lafreniere was their plan A, but Lafreniere was everybody's plan A who was lottery eligible. Their plan B was Stützle. Eisbrom was in Germany numerous times this year scouting him. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to fall down to number 4, so I'm going to go with Perfetti. Number 5, because Ottawa has the 5th pick, and they are probably going to, in my opinion, they're going to select Byfield at 3. They're going to go with Jamie Drysdale at 5. Number 6, I'm going with Marco Rossi. And now number 7, every Devil fan in the world is going to hate me for saying this. But from what I've been reading, they've been very, very, very high on Jack Quinn. So I'm going to go with Jack Quinn at number 7. Number 8, I'm going with Lucas Raymond. Number 9, I'm going with Anton Lundell. Number 10, I'm going with Jake Sanderson.
Okay. Interesting that you had Sanderson fall in your draft. Do you think that is something that you could see happen on Tuesday?
I do. I just think that every year in that top 10, this year you have a goalie in Askarov who could really, where he's picked, could really change the course of everything. And every year, like you had last year with Moritz Seider, Detroit took him. Nobody could believe when they grabbed him last year. Seider was not predicted to go that high. And now, listen, I don't know what the Devils are doing. They may just be talking to Quinn just to talk to him. But from what I've been reading, the interviews with Jack Quinn, the Devils have interviewed Jack Quinn numerous times. And I just think that you're not going to be able to grab him with their 2 lower picks. And I'm sorry, where they're picking now is escaping me. But with those 2 lower picks, I don't think Jack Quinn will still be on the board at that time. So Sanderson fell that low just because I can't see Minnesota taking a defenseman. Minnesota really, really is in desperate need of a center. And hence, that's why I think they're going to take Lundell. I don't think Ross is going to be there for them at that point. So that's why I see him falling that low. That and the Jack Quinn factor that I just put in there.
Interesting. Jack, based on those projections, do you feel like your list is a little bit different based on what by team needs, or do you feel like your list pretty much stays the same?
I was a little unclear on what I thought we were ranking, like where we rank these players in our top 10. As far as who's going to pick who where, my list for that is all over the place. Like, I agree the Rangers are going to pick Lafreniere first. I think the Kings might actually pick Drysdale second. I think they might throw everybody for a loop. Rob Blake has made it very clear that he wants to upgrade his defense. And they have good center prospects. They have Turcotte. They have Kupari. They have guys at forward. They've got Fagemo. I don't necessarily think the Kings need to draft Byfield or Stützle. I think they would like Stützle better because they aren't needing a center, which allows Byfield to fall to third. But I have a feeling that they might actually throw everybody for a loop, take the best defender in the draft at number 2. If they do that, Ottawa gets to pick at 3. Byfield falls to them. They're thrilled. Detroit then, I think, gets a chance at Stützle at 4. And I think they pounce on that. Meaning that at 5, Ottawa circles back and picks Rossi. And then at 6, the Ducks take Raymond, leaving the Devils with a choice of Holtz or Sanderson at 7. I think in that situation, they go Sanderson. They've interviewed Sanderson twice. They like him. I think the Devils fans are going to riot that Holtz is on the board, but they take Sanderson anyway. And then at 8, I think Buffalo has the choice between Lundell and Holtz. I think they're going to go for Holtz, give them some more offensive firepower. That brings Minnesota in at 9, choosing between Lundell and Askarov. In that case, I would go with Lundell, but they've just made some moves to try to get centers, so maybe they take the goaltender Askarov at 9. And then 10th overall is a field day because you could take Perfetti, you could take Lundell if he's still on the board, or that's when you can start making reaches for maybe a guy like a Dawson Mercer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of leeway in this, and it's funny, it perfectly kind of segues into my mock top 10, and mine might end up being the most unpopular mock top 10, but just try to go with me on this one. So my top 3 is not going to change from what a lot of people's top 3 is. New York Rangers selecting Alexis Lafreniere. I think what they really need is a center, but maybe they go out and do that in either free agency or trade, and you don't pass up on a guy like Lafreniere. At number 2, the LA Kings, I think, are going to draft Quentin Byfield. I think there's just too much upside with Byfield. And with Stützle there, I think it could be a push. It could be interchangeable. Either one, whether it's Ottawa or the Kings, are coming away with either of them. Ottawa, then, I think, if Byfield goes at 2, we'll pick Tim Stützle. And here's where we get into some controversy. So the Detroit Red Wings. So Steve Yzerman has made it clear that he doesn't care who he like what any kind of projections say. He's going to pick whatever is best available. One of their biggest needs right now is in net, and I actually could see them reaching at a guy like Yaroslav Askarov, only because, look, Stevie Y did this last year. He picked Moritz Seider. Nobody had Moritz Seider going that high last year. I don't think anybody has Askarov going this high this year. There's no doubt of his ability. He's one of the best goaltending prospects since Vasilevsky and Carey Price. But there is some major risk in drafting a goaltender this high, as most people dictate. And I know both of you will probably agree, it is risky taking a goaltender that high. But in this case, I don't necessarily think Yzerman would care. Because of this kind of creates a bit of a ripple effect. So at number 5, now because you didn't think that somebody of this quality was going to be available, I think Ottawa ends up going for a guy like Lucas Raymond. So having the possibility of having Stützle and Raymond to really kind of kick in that firepower at forward, adding with also Brady Tkachuk, would be really, really interesting to see. After that, at number 6, I have Anaheim drafting Jamie Drysdale. He's the best available defender, and I think they could honestly use a good defensive prospect to kind of fuel the fire, especially if they don't land Alex Pietrangelo. For the New Jersey Devils at 7, I don't know if I see them passing on Marco Rossi if he's sitting there. So he would be an interesting pick there. I like Rossi because he plays bigger than his size, and I think he has a lot of dark horse potential in him of being a very good and talented player. Buffalo, then I see at number 8 taking Alexander Holtz because they could really use some help potentially up the middle if he ends up being a guy who can play up the middle, which will lead Minnesota Wild to select Anton Lundell because ideally you want Askarov, but if he's going to get overdrafted, you go with the next best pick on their board, which would have been Anton Lundell. Rounding out the top 10 with the Winnipeg Jets taking Jake Sanderson, arguably the best player up on the board at that point. So that's my mock 10, and we'll just see what happens by the time the draft rolls around on Tuesday. Any objections to my list, guys? I kind of played counter on your list. So how do you feel?
I don't think so. I think Yaroslav Askarov is possibly the second best player in the draft, and if anybody bites on him that early, that they're addressing an important position of need.
Yeah.
Like I said, I still think Detroit. Like I said, he is definitely kind of a sleeper pick and kind of somebody who's going to throw everything out there. But I just can't see him going that high. I really do think that they're going to go with Perfetti at number 4. They've been high on Perfetti all year, outside of Stützle, of course. And I just can't see him going that high. Now, although I could see him going in the top 10, just not that high. I could technically see him going, and maybe going to Minnesota as well. I don't know.
I think realistically, the realistic projection of the highest Askarov goes is 9th. I think Minnesota is the team most likely to bite on him and take a piece of that pie. But, I could see Detroit doing it, and Ottawa's even put some rumblings out that they might go for it. And if you have 2 picks in the top 10, it's far less risky to bite on the goaltender in the top 10. So it wouldn't shock me to see Askarov go 4th to Detroit. Detroit's going to do whatever they want, or to go 5th to Ottawa. Whoever gets him, though, is getting the second best player in the draft.
True. And it's funny because if you didn't notice in my top 10, I didn't have Perfetti in my top 10. And the reason why is because I actually see Perfetti as a guy that could end up falling in this draft. Like Cole Caulfield last year, dropping to number, I think it was 16 or 17 last year to Montreal. I could see Perfetti dropping just because of his size. And that's something that I'm actually going to cover in a little bit, because this is actually a good segue into our next draft segment, talking about who is a player that could have some bust potential. Who's a guy that, maybe teams need to stay away from drafting as high. So let's start this particular segment off. Tom, let's start with you. Who do you think has some interesting bust potential in the top 20?
Well, this might be a little bit of a monkey wrench in the equation, but I'm going to say Byfield. I really am. Byfield, listen, he has all the tools, but I'm just not sure if he has the toolbox. He has the size, he has the speed, he has the strength, he has the IQ. But it's just a matter of putting it all together. And, I watched in the World Juniors. He was given his chances a couple times. He really didn't show it. The game against Russia, he didn't even get a shift in the championship game. So I figured, okay, the World Juniors, he's the youngest kid on the team. That can happen. He's the youngest kid on the team. You got guys out there who are 19 and 20 years old, guys who are older than guys who have proven their worth with Canada. So, okay, maybe that's not the best way to evaluate him. So the next time I watched him play was that prospects game that they have every year. And in the prospects game, he didn't really do much of anything either. He was out there, but it's like he wasn't taking over the game. He wasn't dominating like everyone said he was going to do. And my thing with Byfield is that I get he's still a top 3 guy, but my thing with Byfield is that he may not put it together right away. And if he never puts it together, he may find himself as a third-line center. He may find himself getting moved around a couple times in a few years. I was all about Byfield in October. But after this year, he really didn't help himself. I hate to say it.
Yeah. Jack, how about you? Who do you think could be a potential bust in this top 20?
I got 2. One of them is one anybody who really talks prospects with me knows who I'm afraid of, and that's Lucas Raymond. I don't know if Raymond is stiff enough for the NHL game. I watch him play, and he reminds me a lot of Jack Hughes when I watch him play, which is a really good thing for him. But I just don't know if he can translate it to the NHL. If he can translate it to the NHL and he shuts me up, awesome, great for him. He's been a consensus top 5 pick since he was 10 years old. It's but he hasn't grown. And he hasn't put on weight the level that people would hope. And I think he's more tailored to be a star in the European game than he is in the NHL game. And my other one is I'm going for the whole pizza here. I think Lafreniere.
Ooh, okay. We need some justification here.
I'll tell you. All right. I'll tell you. Go back and look. And I'm not saying Lafreniere is going to be a bust. I'm saying he could be a bust for the Rangers. Go back and look at what happens to wings that are drafted first overall. Take a look at you guys, your viewers. At some point in time, just go back, go through Hockey Reference, go through Hockey DB, and look at some of the wingers who were taken first overall and in the situations they were taken first overall in, and how often they actually pan out for the team who drafted them. It's not good. It's not a good look. A lot of these first overall pick wings end up getting dealt in blockbuster trades. Taylor Hall and Rick Nash are 2 examples of guys. And then some of them end up like Nail Yakupov. And Lafreniere has all the talent in the world. He's being drafted into a very difficult situation. I mean, if Lafreniere struggles in New York as a first overall pick the same way as Jack Hughes struggled in New Jersey as a first overall pick, I wonder how forgiving the New York faithful are willing to be.
That's true. They have a track record, especially with the New York Yankees and New York Giants and New York Jets, even though they're New Jersey, but we'll just skirt that to the side. But it's true. It is true in that sense.
Hank, tracking back to Hank a little bit, I remember in the middle of the year, some of the chatter that I was seeing from New York fans on Twitter and some of the stuff that I was hearing was just outright disrespectful to Henrik Lundqvist after everything that he had done for the team. And I was totally taken back by it. I was like, oh my God, how are you even doing this to Hank?
Because it's the way some people think. The way people's thinking is, and I'm a Ranger fan, and it drives me up the wall saying that, oh, he's selfish. Oh, he only cares about his shampoo. He's the guy freaking carried the team for years. And it's going to be – and I can't wait until somebody – I was talking to somebody about it the other day. I can't wait to see till opening night. And if Lafreniere doesn't do anything opening night and Matt Zuccarello gets 2 assists wherever the hell he may be playing, and somebody says, oh, look at this. We should have never traded Zuccarello. Give me a break. Give me a break. Everybody says this. It drives me up the wall.
But you see what I'm talking about now. So
I understand that. Yeah, it's a lot of these people think they know what they're talking about, and most of the time they don't.
And he's also coming into a situation where if New York doesn't address their center situation, he's coming into a situation where who's the center he's going to be playing with? I mean, you think to yourself, all right, you're definitely going to put him with Zibanejad, but what if you don't? Who's playing up the middle for him right now? And forget some of the silly projections of the people who insist the Rangers are going to get Eichel, because that's not happening.
No, that's definitely never going to happen. Never going to happen.
But the thing is that I'm not saying Lafreniere is going to be a draft bust, but I think he could be in a similar situation to what Taylor Hall was in Edmonton, where he's a good hockey player, but they end up trading him while he's still young to try to address a need somewhere else. I think the Rangers would be better served finding a way to get a center again in the first round. If you can make a move to get back into the first round and get yourself one of these centers that could be available later on, like a Dawson Mercer.
They do have the 22nd pick, so they still could have some wiggle room down there.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think that's going to have a big impact on it. But I mean, Lafreniere is going to be on my bust watch, and I hate the fact that I'm saying this because he's such a fun player to watch. And I've watched him in the queue for a while. I watched him at World Juniors. He's a very, very exciting player to watch. But the circumstances around it make me wonder how well he's going to do.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I mean, it's the New York faithful needs to be, kind of kind and generous to him to start off with, because they got to understand that he's a rookie. I mean, certainly they weren't as kind and accepting when it came to Capo Caco. I think they're starting to get a little bit more hyped up about what he could do in a sophomore season. My personal bust, the guy that I would want to stay away from, and I see mock drafts taking the Devils here, and that would frighten me as a Devils fan, Cole Perfetti. I think Cole Perfetti, like Lucas Raymond, is going to have a tough time transitioning to the NHL, mostly because he's 5'10", and he's not a physical 5'10". He's a kid that will get thrown around a lot unless he actually adds a dimension to his game. Now, a lot of people might chime in and say, well, what about Marco Rossi? Marco Rossi is 5'10". He plays bigger than 5'10". He's a kid that doesn't mind getting in the thick of things, that doesn't mind getting a little bit pushy. He can push the play a little bit. Whereas I think Perfetti, is a little bit too small. He's going to need some time to develop, and I think rushing his development would only hurt more than it will help. And if he goes to a team that desperately needs the help early and they decide to play him, whether it's this year or the year after, I think it would be a disservice not only to him, but to the team that drafts him. So I think he is a guy that would be better served, like maybe waiting on and just stashing away for 2 years, let him develop and, get his bearings. But that's just me.
I mean, I don't disagree with you on Perfetti, because my other issue with Perfetti is he plays in a league that doesn't even try to play defense. I mean, most of the OHL doesn't really try to play physical, shutdown type defense. It's very run and gun, and it's a lot of scoring. There's a lot of scoring off transitional play. It's a lot of scoring off rushes and scoring through the neutral zone. You don't see a lot of the NHL style get into the offensive zone, get possession, get the cycle going type of scoring.
Yeah, and that's true. But I guess we'll just have to see in terms of these busts. But before we leave our draft discussion for today, we do want to talk about a little bit of the brighter side of things and talk about who might be a big sleeper in this draft, or a dark horse, a guy that we could look later on either in the first round or any round of this draft and be happy if you end up picking this guy, especially with the way that they develop. I'll start with my pick for this one to lead this off. I think a sleeper in this draft to me is William Wallander, and a guy that if you're picking later in this draft, you pick a guy like William Wallander and you let him develop for a few years, and I think you're happy with how he develops. He is a big defensive prospect. He's 6'4", and he's got some mobility. With the right team and the right coaching, I think he would be a guy that if you draft him later in the first round or the very beginning of the second round, I think he would be a really, really good pick in this draft. Jack, how about you?
I think my sleeper pick is probably my guy Dawson Mercer. I've been following Dawson Mercer since he was 15, and he's been you talk about the World Juniors. Dawson Mercer made that World Junior team. There's 4 Canadian kids who are draft eligible this year that made that World Junior team. It's Lafreniere, Byfield, Drysdale, and Dawson Mercer.
Yeah. Tom, how about you?
All right, I have 2 here, but I'm going to be very quick. One of them is Connor Zary. Zary plays in the WHL, one of the harder leagues to play in. It's more of a physical defensive league. First-line center, can play in any situation, was over a point per game this year. They say his skating is a little susceptible, but, I mean, in a year where the draft wasn't so loaded, I feel like more people would be talking about him. And as a Ranger fan, if he's there at 22, you jump on him like flies on you-know-what. I'm not going to say it. You guys can finish that analogy yourselves in your head. Another guy who wasn't talked about much either because he was hurt most of last year is this kid out in Quebec, in the Quebec League, Henrik Lundqvist. The guy is a great playmaker. The problem with him was he was hurt last year, and at first a lot of people thought it was concussion, so a lot of people were staying with him. It turns out he had some problems with his vertebrae. He's only played 1 game this year so far, but in that 1 game he's had 2 goals and 2 assists. Lundqvist, if he stays the course and doesn't get hurt again and is able to stay healthy, he may be the biggest steal when you look back on this draft a few years from now. So just some more food for thought.
I definitely tend to agree. Jack, did you want to add on to that?
I'll reiterate, Connor Zary is the best 2-way center of this draft. He's the best 3-zone center of the entire draft, and it's not even close. We did a mock draft at the Hockey Writers recently, and I picked him 9th from Minnesota and it was a big reach because Minnesota needs to get a center, and Zary's a 3-zone center, and he might not end up being a top line center in this league, but he's definitely going to at least be a second line center in this league, and there are tons of teams that need second line centers. He's going to make somebody very happy who picks him. His 2-way game is far in advance of what a lot of junior hockey players are doing. And then the other guy that I wanted to mention, because he's who I'm hoping the Devils pick at 18, is Jacob Perreault.
Yeah, tend to agree as well. But we'll just have to see what ends up happening on the draft on Tuesday. The draft, for those who do not know, the draft is taking place on Tuesday, October 6th at 7 p.m. on NBC Sports. You can join us here at I-80 Sports, the YouTube page, the Facebook page, as well as Twitter for our live stream that starts at 6:45 p.m. Make sure you check us out that night. We'll be reacting to every pick live and talking about what we thought about each pick and even any trades that also roll in during this draft period as well. Make sure you follow us on i80sports.com, our Twitter handle at i80sports_sportsNHL, and our Facebook group, I-80 Sports Discussion Group. I want to thank very much our guest for today, Jack Dawkins, for being on. And make sure you follow his articles at thehockeywriters.com. Jack, any last thoughts before we say goodbye for today? One prospect to keep an eye on. He's going to go in the later rounds, but he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Zade Wisdom. Remember that name. Definitely. We definitely will. And that will actually probably be a prospect that we see go on Wednesday when rounds 2 through 7 happen as well. Tom, any final thoughts from you?
Nope, just looking forward to the draft. Congrats to the Lightning. And you get to see us on Tuesday night and see me probably celebrate Lafreniere and probably get upset who they pick at 22. We'll see what happens.
Hey, it's okay. I get to be upset potentially at 3 picks in the first round, so we'll see what happens. But make sure you join us on Tuesday. I've been Brian. He's been Tom. He's been Jack. And make sure you follow us at i80sports.com. This has been the NHL Interchange.